Hello, I'm Karen Long, President and founder of Streamline Government Contracts. Streamline helps small to mid-sized government contractors who seek experienced, effective support with contract management that will help reduce risks, increase profits, and enhance your reputation. We do this by negotiating teaming agreements, subcontracts, preparing estimates at completion, and communicating with the contracting officer in their own language. We are the proud sponsors of Government Contractor Chat. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Karen. Hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay Riegelsberger. I am the Operations Manager and Marketing Specialist for Streamline Government Contracts. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker now. Marie Jarabak is a business operations, integration, cost, pricing, and corporate management expert with more than 18 years in federal contracting experience. Marie has full proposal lifecycle expertise and has supported over 5,000 proposals with over $3 million in awards over the past 18 years. She is an expert in pricing strategies, including joint ventures, collective bargaining agreements, GSA, and federal supply schedules, and has provided customized pricing solutions for federal, civilian, state, and commercial contracts. Without further ado, let's welcome Marie Jarabak.
When Karen and I spoke about topics for today's webinar, labor compensation was at the forefront of my mind. And the reason for this is that beginning in Q3 of 2023, we began to see many of our clients concerned that the historical data was no longer a reliable source for determination of compensation. Additionally, we began to see an increase in the requirements for total compensation or professional compensation plans in solicitations and increased scrutiny on realism and reasonableness of direct labor and fringe components. In some larger 2023 solicitations, the government provided floor and/or ceiling direct labor rates to actually guide industry. Often the source and derivation of the rates themselves were confusing to industry, who predominantly determine current or future salary data based on existing historical salary and fringe expenses. After 3 years of unprecedented labor cost increases and wage growth, we find a demand for more reliable and accurate ways to price and forecast compensation expenses. When we refer to labor markets, we refer to either tight or loose markets. A tight labor market is where the job openings are plentiful and available workers are scarce. The loose labor market is just the opposite. The past few years, we have no doubt had a tight labor market. As we look ahead, I don't expect that to change. However, I do expect the responsible organizations who thoughtfully plan and execute compensation methodology and plans will fare better than those in a reactive state in 2024 and beyond. To understand these changes, we must first understand the past market conditions. Between 2020 and 2023, an unprecedented number of employed people switched jobs, often for higher compensation and/or better benefits. Those switching jobs found higher compensation than those who stayed in their jobs, creating a wage growth disparity that averaged 3% over those 3 years. But in mid-2022, the wage disparity for job switchers versus job stayers peaked at an all-time, and we saw a disparity of around 9%. Job stayers were often able to leverage the higher salaries of new employees to negotiate better salaries within their own organizations, though still lower than those who switched jobs. Another interesting metric during this time was the high volume of people who left their fields of discipline entirely, opting for jobs in new markets or disciplines where they could leverage skills rather than experience. In 2023, we saw this trend cooling. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, the 3-month moving average of the median wage growth in hourly pay was 5.2% for job stayers and 5.6% for job shifters, hardly the 3 to 9% differential we'd seen in the past. From this, we can see that the premium compensation and volume of job switching is going to be significantly less in 2024 than prior years. These rapid changes impacted organizations of all sizes. In a rush to secure candidates, some organizations inflated job titles and salaries, making offers based on limited data or reactive data rather than predictive forecasts. In doing so, unrealistic expectations were set for many workers. Others created salary inequity within their existing workforce and are now working to try and remedy the situation before they have major attrition or legal issues. We see a large spike in job dissatisfaction right now, which may stem from candidates being placed in jobs they were either underqualified for or unprepared for. After all, those big salaries come with big responsibilities. Other factors reported include disagreement with corporate culture, lack of opportunity for advancement, limited focus on training and mentorship, and burnout. While employment was surging during 2020 to 2022, we saw a negative shift in some sectors starting in 2023. In the COVID and post-COVID world, companies had to adapt to virtual working environments, and the demand for tech and IT positions was at an all-time high. Over the past 3 years, companies have worked to standardize these systems, practices, and policies around virtual working. And so investments in IT infrastructure and technology have slowed considerably in 2023 and will continue to decline in 2024 with the exception for AI implementation. As such, we've seen high volumes of IT and tech sector layoffs within industry. Add to this a change in commercial IT and tech sectors due to conservative stock valuation and market saturation. 2023 was not a good year for IT and tech talent. We expect this to continue in 2024, again with the exception of those in the AI implementation industry sector. Regarding worker demographics impacting compensation, during COVID, many 65 and older workers took retirement, and we saw a decrease of this age band within the workforce across all sectors. Many did not return to full-time employment post-COVID, and we've seen a decrease in 65 and over within the workforce. Younger generations of workers have entered the workforce during COVID and know a primarily remote work environment. As such, many of them are less likely to work in a traditional workplace setting full-time. At odds with this is the reduction of fully remote job postings. In April 2023, LinkedIn's Global State of Remote and Hybrid Work report cited a drop in remote work to only 8.9% of job postings on their site, compared to 20.3% in April of 2022. Lastly, the federal wage gap to private sector is at an all-time high, with federal workers earning 27.56% less than private industry workers in the same or similar jobs. The geographic disbursement of private sector remote workers significantly increased the compensation averages in traditionally lower priced markets. We now see suburban and mid-sized cities with compensation close to or equal their major city neighbors. Unfortunately, the government has not been able to keep up with these trends based on more rigid salary structures and lagging locality pay data. The combination of these factors resulted in an employee-driven market with wage growth between 5 to 7% in 2023. In 2024, we expect to see some shifts, and these shifts are going to, again, favor in a lot of ways the employer versus the employees. In 2024, we'll continue to see the downward trend in job switching. 95% of workers across all industries still say that they are open to a new job, but 68% believe a new job will be difficult. With less employed applications, open positions are more likely to be filled with unemployed resources. Unemployed candidates have less leverage on compensation negotiations, and as such, we expect to continue seeing a decline in job switching and pay variance between job switchers and stayers, as well as a lower wage growth. Another impact of this trend, job stayers will not be able to demand as high of salaries within their organizations by leveraging data of job switchers. While we expect hiring to remain strong, there is going to be a shift to skill-based hiring, which will allow employers to identify compensation based on specific qualifications and skills rather than general qualifications like job title or degree. Additionally, we expect more roles to be multifunctional or hybrid, especially those in supervisory, management, or technical dual-hatted administrative roles. These positions will have tailored compensation based on responsibility and complexity. Again, compensation will become more tailored to individual performance and skill, a method employers will use to avoid comparability to existing employees with high salaries resulting from the 2020 to 2023 labor markets. This is an opportunity for many organizations to reset compensation while offering fair and reasonable salaries. Careful attention must be made to ensure that these practices are consistent. In 2024, we expect a continuation of a stable talent supply. LinkedIn currently reports that there are 2 applicants for every 1 job posting. Despite stable postings, we do expect hiring to slow. Candidates reporting higher volume of applications with low response or callbacks. Companies who have been burned by quickly hiring candidates who may not have been best suited for their positions or demanded too high of compensation, and now have customers who are unwilling or unable to continue paying for that support, have enacted sort of these long multi-step application processes, some with several interviews. Insight Global reports that recently unemployed full-time workers apply to an average of 30 jobs only to receive an average of 4 callbacks. 55% of unemployed adults said they were burned out from job searching and application. Add to that the length of time to hire, which is much longer than it's been in prior years. Right now, in the energy and defense sector, the average is 67 days to fill a position. The average across all professional services industries is about 47 days. A year to 2 years ago, that average was around 33. So with these, we expect to see that job postings are going to remain steady in 2024, but we do expect unemployment to rise to above 4% by the end of 2024, and we expect the hiring process to continue to be lengthy. Unlike prior year trends, we expect higher volume of the 65 and older workforce. 2024 is going to be a record-breaking year for retirement in the US, with an average of 11,000 Americans a day expected to celebrate their 65th birthday from now until December. Approximately 4.1 million Americans are poised to turn 65 this year and every year through 2027, according to a report from the Alliance for Lifetime Income. Dubbed by experts as Peak 65 or Silver Tsunami, the figure represents the largest surge of retirement age Americans in history. A recent Pew Research Center analysis finds that 1 in 5 people over 65 are going to choose to maintain a full-time status in the workforce. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics project that Americans over 65 will continue to rise in labor force participation over the next decade due to concerns on inflation, cost of living, retirement savings or lack thereof, and other non-economic factors. With a high percentage of new and seasoned 65 and older professionals in the workforce, employers in 2024 will need to maintain robust fringe packages to attract and retain talent. Unfortunately, right now, only 4 in 10 Americans have retirement savings, according to the recent survey by New York Wealth Watch. As such, retirement saving plans as part of a fringe package are going to become more important for employers to focus on. One of the most notable and controversial 2024 labor changes impacting compensation is workplace. I think we're all really familiar with this topic. 90% of employers plan to have workers return to the office some percentage of the time. This may reduce the number of employees living a considerable distance from their workplace. As we saw in 2023, many high earners left high-cost metro areas for more affordable suburban and smaller metro areas, and they took their high salaries with them. This created a situation where traditionally lower priced labor markets are now competing with mid and large city compensation structures. If employees are required to return to work, we could see another geographic shift, which could impact salary by geographic area. This is going to be a key area of data collection and analysis that all organizations should be watching and looking for over the next 18 to 24 months. Now that we have a sense of the current 2024 labor market trends, let's talk about labor compensation and compliance. In an effort to keep up with rising cost of living, inflation, housing prices, and wage demands, the minimum wage laws for state, federal, and local governments have changed in 2024. Minimum wage increased in 22 states and 38 cities and counties beginning in January. Federal wage increased 5.2% in 2024. In addition, we've seen increases to Service Contract Labor Standard, formerly known as SCA or Service Contract Act wage, and health and welfare minimums. Additionally, we see minimum sick leave by state increasing in popularity, with 8 states increasing to 10 in 2024 and another 15 states currently considering minimum sick leave laws, some of which are already in voting status. It is important to note that even if your workforce is primarily skilled workers or professional workers who exceed these hourly minimums, the increase in minimum wage has a ripple effect that increases all wages. Compensation must be balanced and scaled to ensure equity and ensure pay is aligned to skill and experience. Any change to minimum labor will have an impact to compensation within the total workforce. There are 10 states that currently have labor transparency laws and 15 which are considering laws on salary transparency. Again, it's important to note that these ranges are most often broad. However, skilled pricing analysts like myself and my colleagues and price and cost strategists are able to use this information combined with other open source data to determine what we think a reliable compensation is going to be per position. This is important because it's going to change competitive pricing landscapes. It may help you understand your competitors' compensation structures and risk tolerance more, but it's also going to help them to understand you. It's important to remain compliant with these laws while also thinking about how that information can be used in pricing strategies for and against you. With trends and compliance factors identified, what can employers do to accurately estimate budget and forecast labor costs? Maintaining an internal professional employee compensation plan or total compensation plan is good practice in 2024. Regardless of whether this is required for solicitation responses, having one on record enforces the use of verifiable and audited data as the basis for compensation. It creates a routine method for review and adjustment of compensation ranges for the most used labor categories or internal labor categories of your organization. These plans also help to identify when there is an imbalance among labor categories within a job family, or if a particular labor category type is not keeping pace with market. Developing a professional or total compensation plan also ensures your team is frequently evaluating and comparing fringe benefits to competitors and industry, ensuring your packages are attractive and meeting market expectations. Regardless of whether you have a formal professional or total compensation plan, your compensation structures should be reviewed annually. The old 3-year method for review is no longer viable in today's volatile market. A 3-year review or even a 2-year review could mean that your data is not being adjusted and keeping up with market conditions. Salary ranges within a professional or total compensation plan should be based on broad qualifications, such as labor category description and job title, whereas the actual employee compensation should be based on individual skill and experience. Oftentimes, people confuse these, and in their professional compensation plan or total compensation plan, they start speaking of what they are bidding rather than how what they are bidding falls within established ranges. Professional and total compensation plans apply to the organization or division, and they are not always going to be specific based on an individual salary point, but rather ranges. The professional and total compensation plan is meant to establish these range of salaries within the labor category or job family. The compensation plan should highlight how the compensation proposed falls within these established ranges, therefore ensuring the proposed direct labor costs are realistic and reasonable. Professional and total compensation plans must have salary ranges for multiple locations, as it's increasingly important to price based on where the employee resides, not the location of the hiring office or client. Examples of this are when we have people who will hire out of, again, traditionally large labor markets, let's say Washington, D.C., New York City, San Diego, but the people that they're hiring are living in other localities. If they're not adjusting those salaries to those localities, then could be having direct compensation or salary ranges that are not reflective of the cost of living and the geographic market for that area. Many organizations are developing regional professional or total compensation plan ranges when they have or expect to hire resources throughout the US. Doing this proactively at the beginning of a year can make the justification for direct labor at time of proposal easier and more consistent. Professional employee and total compensation plans should be based on multiple sources of verifiable and audited data sources that you can go to for updates on a frequent basis. And you want to go back to the same data over and over again as you go back to make adjustments so that you can have consistency in the application methodology of the determination in your ranges. Data will often need to be forward adjusted and include all labor cost elements to ensure that the data is realistic and reasonable. All assumptions should be documented within the plan so that the future adjustments can factor in all variable cost elements. While historical data points are important to factor into the analysis, you have to be careful to use data points that were not the result of a reactionary labor market. A good example of this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, occupational wage and employment statistics. In the 2 years following COVID-19, the BLS methodology brief clearly stated that the data was incomplete and had large margin of error that was larger margin of error than prior years and periods due to the COVID pandemic. While the data was considered a reliable source, the data alone was not a suitable determination for accurate market forecasts and predictions. Unless an organization had read that entire brief, they may not have known the reason for missing or incomplete data sets within that period, or how to use the data in combination with other sources to get a more accurate and reliable forecast. Our next slide talks a bit about what you should try to avoid when determining compensation. You want to try to avoid contract by contract compensation plan or methodology. While your compensation should be specific to the individual contract budget and the contract requirements, having an overarching compensation structure at the corporate or division level will help to ensure pay stability and equity practices. This ensures compliance with regulations and laws that proposal and or pricing teams may not be up to date on during proposal development. We'd like to try to encourage our customers and clients to move away from an annual evaluation review as a basis for escalation. Using real-time communication and check-ins based on performance provides employers with accurate feedback on compensation and fringe benefits as it relates to their employees. Documenting metrics on the populations within your workforce, for example, which are the high performers versus the low performers? Where do you see the highest turnover? What segments of your workforce may benefit from a one-time performance-based bonus rather than escalations for direct compensation to maintain cost control? Typically, these are strategies companies miss or fail to document, making it more difficult to follow and apply consistently within their organization. Metric collection and consistent feedback allow for proactive adjustment to direct and fringe benefit expenses and cost. Keep in mind that your employees, now more than ever, have access to real-time market data. So if you're not keeping up with constant communication and transparency, you may end up with a retention issue. We also advise clients not to use outdated information or information that is not relevant to the current labor market, economic conditions, or future forecasts. You want to try to utilize labor law transparency data and data collection, comparison, and competitive analysis. You want to be sure to document all adjustments to source data so that you can revisit the data continuously and evaluate trends specific to your business, workforce, and sector. Good examples of this are when we see clients go in and again use large open source reliable data sets like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, employment and wage statistics, but they don't use the right variables or search features such as the NAICS code or the geographic place of performance or the correct SOC codes, and therefore the data that they're pulling, while from a reliable source, is not relevant to the actual compensation structures they should be building. Another thing that we want to factor in is not to accept all data is accurate. Again, as we referenced with the BLS, you want to review the methodology and data source information of all source data and understand how it was derived. For new solicitations, ensure that the contracting officer and Corps have utilized the most current service contract, labor standard, wage determination, or collective bargaining agreement. Request data on seniority lists to accurately forecast wage determination and minimum leave requirements for any SCA or CBA positions. Don't assume prices set for labor can't be changed. For existing contracts, seek equitable cost adjustments through contract modifications, incorporating new service contract labor standard wage determination schedules. When in doubt, consider having an objective third-party expert evaluate your compensation methodology or structure, or have them prepare your total compensation or professional compensation plan. These are tools you will reuse over and over, and when done correctly, they can result in company growth, reduce proposal risk, cost control, and a deeper understanding of the cost elements that impact your corporate goals. When we address compensation, we usually get these 3 questions, and so I've included them here. One of the questions we get often is, should my professional employee compensation or total compensation plan have ranges or specific salaries? Again, when we're building out these types of plans, we would like to see that there is a range of salaries, typically a low and a high, and we'd like to see how your proposed contract compensation falls within these ranges. Again, because of the different requirements at the contract level, might be required for you to go back and revisit those compensation or salary band structures and to adjust them so that your proposed compensation falls in line with that over time. Again, we expect that those should be evaluated no less than annually, but if you are in particularly volatile labor markets, you may need to do it as often as quarterly. We often get questions about wage determinations, one being that I have a contract with a wage determination schedule that has been revised, but not yet updated on my contract. Should I increase my rates now and get a price adjustment after the correct wage determination is issued? Our recommendation and advice to our clients is no on this. And the reason is that any increases provided to employers prior to incorporation of an updated wage determination within the contract may void eligibility for a price adjustment. You can only recover the actual difference between what is paid to employees and the incorporated published wage determination rate, not the difference between wage determination schedules. As such, if you pay an employee the higher wage prior to the wage determination being incorporated by contract modification, there will be no difference, and your company may no longer be eligible for price adjustment. So again, this is an area where a lot of times organizations will say, but I want to be fair and I want to make sure I'm paying the employees the prevailing wage. And in that case, we would make recommendations that you make your contracting officer aware of the updated wage determination schedule and work to get that incorporated through modification on your contract. Another question we see often is we have a large percentage of our workforce scheduled for retirement in 2024 to 2025. What should we begin to do for planning? One is that you want to assess whether those positions are going to be backfilled, and if so, will they be backfilled with existing employees through promotions or alignment changes? You want to review the benefit structures themselves and make sure that there's not going to be a change within your workforce population. And if you have age-banded benefit healthcare plans, this might have a positive impact on your future fringe benefit costs, depending on how you backfill those positions. It's the same whether you have a large influx within a specific generational grouping, to be looking at what their perceived value is going to be on things like your fringe benefits, like your corporate culture, and your compensation structures. Okay, so those are the 3 questions that I know that we get asked a lot, so I want to be a little more proactive about it. But that sort of wraps up our presentation and our discussion, and so that opens it up for questions.
Thank you, Marie. That was great. That was good information. I did not realize that if you started utilizing a wage determination too quickly before, like you said, it was incorporated into the contract, I didn't realize that that could nullify a price adjustment. So I learned something today, definitely.
Oh, that's
Um,
great.
and I also I had not thought about the because I try to think about contractual things analytically, but I had not thought about the retirement question or issue. So again, really good information.
Great, thank you.
Um, what impact do the recent changes in state and federal minimum wage have on pricing in 2024?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the things that folks sort of need to realize is that the Executive Order 14026, that executive order and executive order, I forgot the name of it, but the number, but there's one other. They essentially set the federal contractor minimum wage. And so it's really important because when we go through and we do compliance reviews or we help our clients with pricing, one of the things that we see most often is that they're not compliant with those minimum wage guidelines. And so we have to update their pricing to ensure that they, as federal contractors, are being compliant with those executive orders. Additionally, what we see is that Again, with wage band structures, when we see minimum wage in specific states or areas, that might mean that your entire workforce within that particular region needs to have an update, again, because those senior positions following those minimum wage guidelines or bands are going to be higher, and we need to make sure that there's appropriate scale and balance between those salary ranges.
Okay, so does the federal government recognize this when evaluating price proposals?
Yes, so actually what we see quite a bit is that if clients do not do a good enough job justifying and preparing the support documentation around the basis for the direct compensation, but also the fringe benefits, that they could be seen as a risk, all right? And we
Okay.
have to take it for granted a lot of times that our government counterparts who are doing those evaluations are fully up to date on all of the different executive orders and all of the new minimum wage guidelines. Again, with 22 states changing and 38 cities and counties, it's a lot of data to keep current in our minds. And so being able to provide that support data when you have those detailed total compensation or professional compensation plans, even if they're not asking for them, it eliminates risk. It allows the evaluator to see and follow the methodology for your direct and fringe compensation. And if you're lower risk, you're less likely to have your evaluated price adjusted.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you. Um, what benefits or compensation features are most sought after within the industry?
Yeah, so again, we're seeing a change in the fact that workers are going to require more folks to come back to the office some percentage of time. We don't expect it to be full time. So flexible working arrangements, right? That hybrid model is going to be a really key component of fringe packages. Whether that means that people are going to be able to have flexible work arrangements, maybe they're going to have different core hours. It could be that they are able to have more of those offset schedules, maybe like traditional 40-10 schedule that a lot of us are familiar with in the Washington, D.C. area, where every other Friday is an off day. There's going to be components like that that we're going to see people looking for now that they're not going to have maybe the opportunity for full-time remote work. In addition to that, with fringe benefits, retirement savings is going to be key. And medical is going to be key. So medical costs, healthcare costs have gone up 26% on average. And so right now what we're seeing, and SHRM is reporting that a lot of those costs are still being handled and taken care of by the employer. But employees are still handling a lot of rising costs, deductible costs are going up, just costs for medical in general. And so looking at the medical plans, dental, insurance, all of those sort of features within a fringe package are really going to be important for people to have, just to keep pace with what the market expectation is and to be able to retain employees. Within specific market sectors right now, we're seeing some of those perks, right? Company culture, things like training. Training is a critical thing right now. Mentorship. A lot of the younger generations, in particular, that are entering the workforce, who have been predominantly remote this entire time, really talk about this sort of lack of engagement with their counterparts. And so they're looking for that. They're looking for formal structures to be able to allow them to navigate the structures for promotions within their organization, and they want to see those plans documented.
Does it vary by discipline or demographic area? I know you did mention like the Washington, D.C. area. What about like, do you find different trends or in other parts of the U.S.?
So what we're seeing, because of the great disbursement of the workforce across the US, is that whereas you used to have sort of large hubs of people around these metro cities, you don't have that anymore. You might have one team, for example, in a domain area, all engineers, for example, and you have them in 3 or 4 different areas of the US. And so they lack sort of that cohesive structure coming together in a collaborative in-person environment. But they all, because they work together and they talk together and they're still working just like we are right now in the sort of virtual teaming practice, they do share a lot of information, right? About compensation, about benefits, about what's going to be important to them. And so even though you have folks geographically dispersed, it is going to be important to make sure that you are, working to be transparent with them about your benefit structures. And that if you have benefit or compensation structures that are different by geographic area, that you are very clear to your team about why that is.
Um, and what risks are there in the current trends in market compensation and pricing?
Yeah, so there's a couple major risks right now that we see, and that is that people are bidding unrealistically low compensation structures, again, to be competitive. The government in particular with evaluations, I think, has done a good job trying to present estimates, IGCEs, or providing, again, floor or ceiling data within large bids to try to level set industry. We've also seen an increased number of solicitations where they are providing escalation factors, and they are essentially dictating this is going to be the direct labor escalation that you need to use. When we see that, it's because we believe that there isn't necessarily a trust that industry is going to be consistent in the application of those types of variables. And so there's a risk where if you're not given those types of variables, again, escalation, direct labor, validation of the labor category mappings to qualifications, skills, that you could be deemed unrealistic or unreasonable. It really comes to support and making sure that you have detailed support and support that the government evaluator is able to follow along with and thoroughly understand the methodology.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And we have a question here. Does your company help in capturing data, forecasting, capture management, and connecting with federal agencies?
Yeah,
So
Um, we do quite a bit of competitive intelligence or analysis in which we will evaluate where we feel like as part of the capture process from a pricing perspective, the labor and the labor components may come in for, your top 3 competitors on a bid. We don't specialize in capture. We work with different additional resources and partners in industry who might focus on areas like that, but we typically just specialize in pricing and cost.
okay. Any other questions? We'll
I did have a I did have a couple questions,
go
if you
ahead.
don't mind. The first was, I know you talked about the hybrid and whatnot. Do you foresee, like, because we have several roles that are essentially on-site only. It's like, have you seen kind of difficulties with people trying to find folks who are willing to go on-site daily?
Right now, depending on the market that you are in, it is difficult. In markets like defense sector, where people
Right.
are expected to be based on clearance or based on the type of work that they're doing on site, we haven't necessarily seen a premium for people to go in and again be on site full time. There are exceptions to that, and where we see that is again in things like administrative or IT type positions where they have been able to do those roles virtually or in a remote or hybrid function. We see that again with those, you may have to pay a premium. What we recommend is that people look at the compensation structure. One of the notes we had back was evaluate whether that needs to be part of the compensation structure that is continually escalated. So the direct compensation, or could that be, for example, built into your fringe bonus structures? So for folks that are going to be on site and that they are having commuting expenses and their days maybe are going to be structured differently than your remote workers, maybe looking and providing them with, larger fringe benefits for commute costs, maybe providing them with, again, one-time annual bonuses or length of service awards that might be slightly structured different than the hybrid employees. Those are good examples where we have people look at their cost structures because they don't continually escalate year over year, and therefore you have more cost control and you're not passing along those premium costs to your end clients.
Got it. And I did have a second question. I know you talked about healthcare. I've seen kind of all over the place. I know lots of places will like offer 100%. Some will offer like less. Our company provides 75%. Although, I mean, we do offer kind of like the Blue Cross Blue Shield, which tends to be a little bit higher. Do you think people care about the actual healthcare itself, or do you think they care more about the percentage that's being covered?
So historically, a lot of times it was the percentage being covered, and I would say that it really did have an impact. the perception of value on those things was kind of age banded. Again, your younger population probably just wanted the cheapest plan they can get, low deductible.
Right.
As you had folks that were sort of aging in those bands, maybe they had families, maybe they had children, maybe they themselves had more health related issues because of age or age factors, then you saw that they became more concerned about the type of benefits that are being offered. Okay. And again, that's where companies need to go and look at who's your workforce, what that workforce population is. In some cases, organizations, if it makes sense, will have multiple plans. And the reason for that is that then they can really customize those plans to those workforces, all right, the different bands within them.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, so it is going to depend. I would say that because costs are increasing, and again, so even for the folks who traditionally were just concerned about the cost, right, the percentage that was covered versus what the benefits were, I think they're going to be more concerned with the type and quality of the benefits, because when they go in for anything, it's going to cost more. So they want to make
Right.
sure that they're getting good services.
Do you see lots of people going towards like the 100% coverage, or do you think it's still mostly kind of more partial?
We're seeing it the other way. We're seeing where people are pulling back. And so where companies used to be at 100% are at 80, at 70, at 75,
Got it.
at 60/40. So we're seeing them pull back in some of those areas. And again, what they're doing is sometimes they're offsetting and they're, again, setting up things like the health savings account and they're adding different pieces and components to the benefits to allow their employees to still be able to, contribute some savings. Sometimes they will actually contribute to those savings accounts on behalf of the employees. And so there's different options there, but we are seeing actually a pullback in the percentages that are covered. That's, for traditional fringe benefit structures. If you have SCA or CBA, collective bargaining agreement, and you have high volume of those populations within your workforce, you don't really have a lot of control over that, right? They mandate contractually through those schedules what needs to be covered and what you need to offer. And again, those are all rising costs. And so if you have a large percentage of SEA and CBA where you don't have control of those benefits, you're very likely going to adjust by taking some cost and benefit away from your professional exempt or your standard fringe pools.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Good questions. And we have another one in chat. Which are main focus areas you help companies in achieving contracts?
So EOP specializes in cost and pricing. And so we will help customers and clients with price strategy, with tying their capture strategies to a winning price strategy. We will a lot of times work as an objective third party to validate whether the capture data and intel that they've brought in is going to be adaptable to a winning price strategy. We will help organizations to provide and prepare the actual source material to develop validation, justification, and support for all cost and price elements. So things like direct labor, escalation, profit and fee, using weighted guideline structures. We can help with things like your wrap rates, impacting indirect costs. And so we're able to do the full line of service that anyone might need with a cost and price solution to help them get to a winning bid, including the competitive analysis. Or a lot of times we can provide just high-level strategy and just be a sounding board for organizations that just want to make sure they're making strong decisions.
Marie, or let me just ask one more time. Anybody else have questions that I missed? Let me check our chat one final time. And okay. And it says, what is your current prices? Is it annually charged or on a monthly basis? So how do you guys work with people?
Sure. So we provide master consulting agreements annually, and all that does is cover an NDA and all the terms and conditions. It doesn't obligate an organization into any minimum costs. We work on a time and material basis, so we only ever bill for the hours that are worked. And for every effort, we provide what we would consider to be a scope of work, which sort of break down the requirements, what we feel needs to be completed. We walk through that thoroughly with the clients, and that comes with a level of effort. Price points vary based on who conducts the work. We have junior analysts all the way up to subject matter experts. So depending on the complexity of the work and the time frame of the work, we're able to usually work that through with the clients to make sure that we're able to get them a solution that works in their budget.
Okay, and Marie, if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do that if they have further questions
Yeah,
regarding
so
EOP?
yeah, they can go right to EOP. They can use this scan here, or they can go to our website. They can contact us through email, and myself and Heather Teed, managing partner, will be able to respond back to them and let them know any information they might need.
Okay, well, thank you, Marie. I learned some things that I didn't know, so it was very informative. I really appreciate your time and great presentation. Thank you to our audience for joining us. Lindsay, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Karen and Marie. Our Government Contractor Chat complimentary Zoom webinar series will be the third Wednesday of each month, excluding holidays, from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Wednesday, April 17th, we will have Jill Ryan, President and Federal Prime Program Manager at Gadfly, presenting Making a Mind Shift with CPARS. Wednesday, May 15th, we will have Diane Menser, Business Operations and COO Advisor at Diane Integrates, presenting 6 under the radar KPIs are impacting the value of your company. Wednesday, June 12th, we will have Vikas Sharma, Technical Program Manager and Federal PSO at Google, presenting how AI can impact federal contracting work. This will be the second Wednesday in June as we observe the Juneteenth holiday. To register for these webinars, you can scan the QR code on the screen now. Thank you for your time today. We hope to see you in April.